Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am here to preview UFC 316. And let me say here in advance, there's going to be a lot of horse shit in this video. You know, where I get my hands going, where I'm like, oh, I'm picking this guy here, but I'm betting on this guy here. And he can win by knockout or submission in round two. It's going to be a draw and whatever. There's going to be a lot of shit like that. There are so many lopsided underdogs here on this card. It is astounding. And I'm a degenerate. I have to bet on them. But I will be honest with my predictions because I know some of you just want to hear the fucking predictions. You're like Al Swearingen, which, go ahead, Al, take it away.
Don't give me this on the one hand and on the other hand.
All right.
Just say, this is the way I think it's gonna be, because this several hands fucking shit don't help me, huh?
I'll boil things down.
Point taken. So I will just get into the fights, but just know the horse shit comes after the prediction. The prediction can be found at the top of every video segment. But still, you should stick around and watch the video because even if you disagree with my prediction, I'll help you make your case and I'll help you make your bet because I try to cover everything. All right. Okay, opening up the card, we have Mark Choinski making his short notice debut against Markel Mederos. Mederos was supposed to fight Balagioki a week ago, and then he ended up getting sick, I think. Whatever happened there, I'm not exactly sure. And I believe it happened in his last fight as well, where he ended up changing opponents a week later. But I'm going to assume he's in good condition because he agreed to sign up to another fight a week later, and I am picking him to win. I'm going with Mederos winning. I'm going to take him winning by decision. I've never seen Choinski lose here, so there's no telling what his first loss will look like. And I'll say a late TKO stoppage would not surprise me. But the fight I'm envisioning is him taking over and looking better down the stretch, and I'll go with him winning a decision. Markel Mederos. Choinski, who I really want to call Choinski, is 29 years old. He's 8-0. He's a wrestler first and foremost. And he's got 5 submission victories. The other 2, he's got 2 by decision and just 1 TKO. He's definitely comfortable on the feet, though. His record doesn't exactly indicate that, but he is comfortable on the feet. I just do think he's going to be at a disadvantage. I think Mederos is going to be a little sharper, and I think those advantages will hit the surface in rounds 2 and 3. I think Choinski might be looking to wrestle here, but I don't know. It depends on how good a shape he's in as well. I think I'm expecting him to have potentially one good takedown in him and control, but I think Mederos has handled himself well, even though I've picked against him both times, I believe, in the UFC. But I think Mederos is going to be able to handle the wrestling. Maybe he'll concede a takedown or two, but in general, I expect him to be able to keep this one standing and certainly to be able to do that down the stretch. He's shown to be a good enough hustler. Again, Austin Hubbard, I picked to beat him, and Austin Hubbard's a good hustler, may not be the best fighter. And I think Mederos is just going to be, in general, in better shape here, and in general, the better striker. So I've got him winning that type of fight. But again, I've never seen Choinski lose. He's 8-0. He's got one fight, this fight here against Alex Watson as an amateur. It's listed as a no contest, I think, on Tapology, but it would have been a victory, whatever happened. I think he ended the fight in the full mount, pounding the guy, and maybe something was illegal, whatever. But his 8 victories as a pro, he's been pretty dominant. He's had these 2 fights go the distance against Justin Lovrich and Johnny Simone, who is Ricky Simone's cousin, I believe. And even though Johnny Simone has only lost more momentum since that loss, he's still a good enough fighter where that was a good victory, especially a 15-minute victory for Mark Choinski. Mark Choinski, he's, like I said, definitely a wrestler first and foremost. And in a lot of these fights with submission victories, it just takes one takedown and he goes through these guys because generally he's fought some shittier competition. But in the 2 fights, he's been forced to go past round 1 and go the distance. I thought he looked good down the stretch. He showed some good traits in general, even though, again, it's not like he's the most tested guy. So I can't say, oh, he's got a rock-solid chin and excellent cardio. This is a big step up against Markel Mederos, and it's under some dog shit circumstances. So I am picking against him. But there's no obvious hole to Mark Choinski. He definitely showed good hustle when he's needed to, and when he's needed to squash fighters, which has been most of his career, he's squashed them. And I think here he's going to have minimal success with this wrestling. I just expect his wrestling to be able to maybe produce 1 takedown, maybe 2, but in general, I expect it to not be the dominant force in this fight. And I think they're going to settle into a striking match, and I think on the feet, Markel Mederos is going to be sharper. I think Mederos is a sharper striker in general, but certainly those advantages should be exacerbated if he is, I love that fucking word, if he is in much better shape. And I do expect him to be in better shape again, even though he was sick enough to pull out of a fight a week ago. But yeah, I'm going with Mederos. Mederos, I picked against him against Quinones and Hubbard, I believe. And he's shown enough hustle to walk away with 2 decision victories. And I think here he's fighting a guy that's taken a big step up in competition. And Mederos has been there, seen that. And I think he's going to be next leveling Choinski here. Might be competitive early, but I expect Mederos to pull away as the fight goes on and be the sharper striker. Choinski's really comfortable on the feet. He can mix it up. He can even get a little flashy, but I just think Mederos is going to be sharper, quicker, better technically, and again, in better shape to back all that shit up. The odds here have Mederos now as a minus 245. I believe those odds have come down, but I still have not placed a bet on this. Mark Choinski's still sitting at plus 200. He's an undefeated wrestler. It's tempting, and I think I said I'm betting on every underdog, but I'm not. In general, I'm sitting this one out as of now, and maybe I'll throw some sprinkles on some props for Mederos winning down the stretch or something. But in general, I don't know what to expect from Choinski in defeat, and I'm picking him to suffer a defeat. Ashmouz versus Quillen Salkilld. My prediction for this fight is Quillen Salkilld wins, and I'll go with him winning by decision. Having said that, I've already bet on Yanal Ashmouz, so I'll go with him winning by disqualification. Because fuck it. I bet on his money line. But yeah, I just think Yanal Ashmouz, who, let me pull up the odds here, he's plus 370. Yeah, that warrants a bet from me, even if I'm picking against him. Just too wide, those odds. It's not like either guy is really the most firmly established commodity in the UFC. Commodity. I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, but you know what I mean. These guys have 8-1 records. Both of them have 8-1 records. Quillen Salkilld, he's only lost once as a pro. Was in his MMA debut, his pro MMA debut, which that's dismissible as far as I'm concerned. May as well be an amateur fight. It's the only fight of his that I haven't seen, but he was submitted in round 2 against this guy Pablo Torrealba or something. I don't know. Either way. But he also lost twice as an amateur. I was able to see those fights, but they're 9-minute amateur fights, and I dismiss those even more heavily. But no doubt he's got a lot of momentum right now. He's been 5 rounds here against Brett Pastore. He beat this guy Don Martin twice by a second-round submission, showing he's a resourceful fighter. And it's not like these are easy fights. And against Gage Young, on paper, it seems like an easy fight, but that was a good test for him. And I thought he handled himself well. Dealt with Gage Young well when Gage was turning it on. But all throughout, I thought he was relentless. He hit 10 takedowns, I think, on Gage Young. Didn't secure the most control time with those takedowns, but it's good to see he can work like that for 15 minutes. And then, of course, going into the UFC, he knocked out Anshul Jubilee. I still have no idea what exactly happened there, but he floored him in 20 seconds. Definitely hit him with a good right hand, and yeah, he's dangerous. Speaking of which, Yanal Ashmouz showed his danger in his UFC debut, knocking out Sam Patterson, who's since regained his step there. He's got one loss. It was 2 fights ago to Chris Duncan. Chris Duncan, who's definitely going to be hanging around the UFC for the foreseeable future. That guy's a good fighter, and I have underrated him. But yeah, he's definitely gained my respect, and that's not a bad loss. Plus, I think Yanal busted himself up there. He injured himself in that fight. He looked good against Trevor Peek. I think a lot of fighters can look good against Trevor Peek. You know, if you can force a technical fight on him, you've got him. But he was able to do so. And throughout his career, his regional career, he's shown great traits. Great traits in the PFL against Dennis Hughes here, and some nice finishes down the stretch before making it to the big time. I think Yanal Ashmouz is going to be able to stop Quillen Salkilld from bullying him with takedowns relentlessly. I think Quillen can take him down, but I think Yanal is generally going to make that difficult for him. And if he does get taken down, I think Yanal Ashmouz will minimize the control time. And on the feet, look, he's given up 1.5 feet of reach and like 2.5 feet of height. He's going up against it physically. But I do think punch for punch, power punch for power punch, he's got a little more power. And I also think he can close the distance well. Plus, he seems to be tough as all fuck. So, without having seen either guy really establish himself in the UFC, I think this one's wide open. And with one guy being plus 370, it warrants a bet from me. And that's what I've done. And for Quillen Salkilld, the official prediction is he wins by decision. The over is available right now at minus 175. I do think I would pick either guy to win a decision. I think Yanal Ashmouz's most likely path to victory is decision. Again, even though he's got good pop in his punches and Quillen's got one defeat as a pro and it's a rear naked choke. But I still think I'd go with decision for either guy. But the pick is Quillen Salkilld. The bet is Yanal Ashmouz. Next up, we have Jeka Saragi versus Ju Song Yu. My prediction here is Ju Song Yu wins. And I'm going to go with him winning by TKO in round 2. And just so you know, I'm envisioning that TKO happening on the ground. A submission wouldn't totally surprise me, but as you see here, he's only got 1 submission in his 8 professional victories. He's definitely a better ground fighter than that would suggest, but still, I'll go with a TKO finish. And it's not like we haven't seen Jeka finished on the ground with a TKO. That's how he lost against Anshul Jubilee. But I'm going with Ju Song Yu. Having said that, he is a 5-1 favorite, as hopefully you see here. 5-1 favorite almost. Yeah, for a UFC debutant, if I can sound like a cocksucker. That is not good. I mean, it's great for him, but that's not going to warrant a bet from me. What would warrant a bet is somebody like Jeka Saragi, who, despite showing he's beatable and maybe he's about to be flushed out of the UFC, but he is dynamic and he's coming back at plus 360. I haven't bet on him, but that number is certainly enticing to me. I'm just going to wait for the props and probably put a small little sprinkle of a shekel on him winning by finish. I would go with knockout before submission, but I would go with submission before decision. I think a dynamic finish is how he would get it done. And my one main criticism of Ju Song Yu is that he's an awesome striker, but I think he's a little too comfortable on the feet. From being an awesome striker, I think he's lackadaisical. I think he's left himself open, and I know Jeka Saragi is explosive. He's the Indonesian Joe Anderson Brito. He can cover ground, and he keeps that danger deep into round 3. So Ju Sung Yu's got to mind his P's and Q's on the feet. But I do think he's better on the feet. I think he's underrated on the ground. I think he's I think he's going to finish him on the ground. That is my prediction. I think he's going to get on top of Jeka and drown him. And Jeka, I'll pull up his record. He's been beaten on the ground before. He's got a record of 14-4. Like I said, he lost to Anshul Jubli by TKO in the UFC. He lost to Weston Wilson by submission. Weston Wilson was able to trap him on the ground from the guard and put him in a triangle, and then I think close the show with an armbar. I saw this fight a few days ago, but I forget exactly what happened. All right, his record's not coming up, but I know he lost another round 4 submission loss to this guy, Lanja or something, Ansa something. But he got him out of there in round 4. Jeka had a nice moment early on for half of round 1. And then after that, it was pretty much a slow, drowning type of fight. This guy, Anga beat him round 4 submission. Hopefully you can see this shit. And then he lost in his debut to this guy, Kevin Stulistio by Kimura, who he beat, I believe. Yep, he submitted him in round 3 in a rematch a year later. But whatever. Pro debut, you dismiss that anyway. But still, he's been beaten on the ground in all of his losses. And I guess that's why I'm going with Ju Sung Yu to hopefully be a smart fighter and go that route. Especially seeing Jeka Saragi's lone UFC victory here over Lucas Alexander. Although he's got some nice ones on the road to UFC. Spinning back fist in round 3, I believe, yeah. And then this knockout here in round 1. I'm not just reading records. I've seen these fights. Jeka Saragi is definitely a problem if you underestimate his danger, his explosiveness. I think he's a very explosive guy, and Ju Sung Yu has left himself open. But technically, I think Ju Sung Yu is his superior on the feet and on the ground. I'm going with him winning by round 2 TKO on the ground, kind of like the Anshul Jubli loss. And even though the under is only available at under 1.5 rounds right now. It's at plus money, and not going to lie, I have bet on that. But my more serious bet will be on under 2.5 rounds as far as the over-under goes. I'm excited to play that because I think Jeka's primary path to victory is a finish, and that's a Hail Mary to begin with. And I think his primary path to defeat is certainly a finish. And Ju Sung Yu, even though he's won a good amount of fights by decision, he's definitely a good, dangerous guy, and he's shown he can mix it up in these decisions as well. I think he's going to outfight Jeka and slowly drown him. Next up, we have Ariane Lipski da Silva versus Wang Tong, or Kong Wang. My prediction for this fight is Wang Tong wins, and I'll go with her winning by decision. Having said that, my bet will be on Ariane Lipski, and I'll take her winning by fucking disqualification or whatever the fuck I said before. I'm just going to keep reiterating the same shit, including the same shitty jokes, because my thoughts on every fight are the same. They're the same. I'm picking Wang Tong to win. And I've got her winning by decision. I think she's the better striker. I think she's one hell of an athlete and blah, 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 blah. Having said that, Ariane Lipski's the seasoned vet, 31 in her prime, battle-tested, 17-10 is not the prettiest record, but a good chunk of her career, most of it's been in the UFC, where most of her losses have taken place. She's been beaten 4 times by TKO, but only one of them was a real knockout. I haven't seen her Diani Firmino loss from way back when. Forgot you can see this shit. She was TKO'd 10 years ago in 2 minutes into round 1. That could look like anything. It's 2 minutes. But the only time she's been knocked out, as far as I can tell standing, was Priscilla Cachoeira, who hits harder than Chad Mendez, and she has the aggression of Vanderlei Silva. But Wang Tong, she has been clubbed and subbed, against Gabriela Fernandez. Let me pull up her record here. She lost by technical submissions. She didn't tap. That's a good look, but she still got strangled. That's a club and sub loss where you could say she showed a little bit of everything in defeat. But certainly for the first 7, 8 minutes of that fight, 8 minutes, she was doing very well. She was leading the dance, taking it to Gabriela Fernandez, and then just got a little too comfortable and maybe didn't think the jiu-jitsu gal could get her legs up to her chin, and she paid for getting a little sloppy. She righted the ship in the next fight against Bruna Brazil, who is definitely no slouch. Again, I think she'll be around the UFC for some time. She's already done well. And in general, Wang Tong still looks like a fighter who's sealing his championship, despite that big lapse against Gabriela Fernandez. I'm sure if they were to rematch, Wang Tong would be the distinct favorite. Probably not fucking 10-1 or whatever. But speaking of which, she's 5-1 here against Ariane Da Silva. How could I not bet on Ariane Da Silva? Ariane Da Silva is a well-rounded girl. She can handle herself well on the feet and on the ground. Wang Tong is definitely no slouch on the ground, but Ariane Da Silva, Lipski Da Silva, I believe would certainly get the first submission between the two. Even though, again, most of the TKO losses for Ariane come on the ground. But even though she's been bested on the ground, she's the overall better ground fighter. She's certainly got the much deeper resume to back it up. Not to mention this fucking knee bar here over Luana Carolina 5 years ago. And, of course, the arm bar over Casey O'Neill, where she looked phenomenal in that fight. And her 2 losses since are to very good fighters, Karine Silva and Jasmine Jasdavicius. And they're particularly very good on the ground, where Wang Tong might be underrated or whatever the fuck, but she is not very good on the ground. So I think Ariane Lipski can handle herself on the feet. She's a solid enough athlete. I think she's going to be at a disadvantage there. Don't get me wrong. I think she's technically the inferior fighter, and I've got Wang Tong winning a decision. But my point is Ariane Da Silva can make shit happen opportunistically, turning things around on a dime. She's got some snappy kicks as well, snappier than Gabriela Fernandez. And on the ground, she's very solid herself. She may not be the overall best ground fighter because we've seen her beaten there and girls have gone through her, but she is definitely a dangerous submission artist, and she's definitely going to have more to offer on the ground than Wang Tong, I think, from any position, really, aside from if she gets her back taken. But yeah, the upsides with Ariane, the pick is with Wang Tong. I'll wait to see what the props and the over-under and the point spread and all that looks like, because I do envision Wang Tong winning a decision before anything else. But right now, I'm sitting this one out, which means I'm going to get drunk and bet on Ariane Lipski Da Silva. Next up, we have Andreas Gustafsson versus Khaos Williams. My prediction here is Khaos Williams wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. Having said that, I haven't bet on him, and I'm not going to be betting on Andreas Gustafsson, but I might just sit this one out entirely because I feel like Andreas Gustafsson might be a more dangerous Rolando Bedoya. Gustafsson is going to be getting in Khaos Williams' face, and I feel like that could prove to be a disaster where Khaos goes through him with a knockout perhaps, but there's a chance that works the other way. And of course, with nobody being knocked out, I know Gustafsson is going to have a half a point on the judges' scorecards for aggression. So in general, I'm probably going to be sitting this one out. But Khaos Williams is a 2-1 favorite, and he is my pick to win. I do think if you told me either guy got knocked out, I'd pick Khaos to get the victory. I think he's very dangerous, even though Gustafsson is more potently dangerous as far as his record goes. But Khaos, we've seen his power, and I certainly believe in it. And also, if you were to tell me one guy won a decision, I would favor Khaos Williams. I would give him the nod there. I know he can fight 3 hard rounds and keeps his power, and he doesn't get rattled even when he gets hit with some hard shots and whatever. He's good at recovering, and most of the time, I mean, he's only ever been finished once, and it was against Gabriel Bonfim in his last fight, and that guy's a fucking monster. He's been hurt. He's been put in chokes and saved by the bell perhaps a few times, but I trust the overall durability of Khaos Williams, even with that submission loss finally to Gabriel Bonfim. And Khaos is, I think, also the guy who can play the matador in this fight. Did I just say Khaos Williams is going to be the matador? No, but I do think he is the guy that can be the technically superior fighter, the leg kicker, and the guy that's doing the baiting and the countering. I think Khaos is very comfortable in there, and again, he keeps his composure for 15 minutes. Gustafsson, I think, is going to be getting in his face and trying to break him. And I think if he doesn't break him, he's going to be pushing for 15 minutes. And again, that's something that scares me from betting on Khaos at this point. But yeah, Gustafsson, he's got an 11-2 record. He lost to Joelton Lauterbach, who was supposed to fight in the UFC last year, and then whatever the fuck happened. It was a majority decision, as you see here. Very close fight, very heavy in the clinch. I did think Joelton narrowly won the fight, but as you can see, it's a narrow scorecard there. And then he also lost to this guy, Damian Janikowski, this Polish fighter, beat him by split decision 5 years ago. That was a fight where he lost due to grappling. He won round 2. He was taken down, I believe, in all 3 rounds, but it was enough to secure rounds 1 and 3 for Janikowski there. But yeah, both fights split majority decision, obviously close fights. He's never been thoroughly dominated, and he's obviously never been knocked out. That goes for his amateur career as well. He lost a decision here, and that's it. He was never knocked out as an amateur. And I think that bodes well for him going into this fight with Khaos. But I still have to favor Khaos. I think he's got the better chance of getting the knockout. I think he's got the better chance of being a matador. And I think I know he can fight for 15 hard minutes at the UFC level. So Khaos gets the nod, and nobody gets the bet because I'm too scared. But by the way, this can be an awesome fucking fight. This guy Gustafsson, he's on record saying he's the least technical fighter in the UFC, and he's just coming to kill. And his nickname is Bane. So this should be an awesome fucking fight. Really is great that this fight was made after all the horseshit with these two guys. Next up, we have Sergey Spivac versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. My prediction for this fight is Sergey Spivac wins, and I'll go with him winning by submission in round 2. Having said that, my primary bet as of now is on the under 2.5 rounds minus 154. I've played that same exact number that those odds were released today. And I was hoping it wouldn't be set at 1.5 rounds because I wouldn't be as gung-ho on that, regardless of what the line was. But 2.5 rounds, I'm very comfortable with that, especially at a number like minus 154. My prediction is Sergey Spivac wins and goes through Waldo on the ground. But if I'm wrong, I think Waldo knocks out Sergey Spivac. Spivac's been knocked out a bunch, and even though Waldo may not be on the same athletic level as those guys, he is still a big, heavy boxer, and he's definitely got knockout power, and he's shown so in the UFC, even though he's also shown he could be a 15-minute fighter. But I'd be surprised if we saw one of those 15-minute glorified sparring matches. I think this is going one way or the other, and it's going to end in a finish. And my prediction is Spivac, and he is a favorite there. The line is too similar to the under, so I played the under. But Spivac, I do predict he wins by getting Waldo down. Spivac hasn't always looked like the dominant beast, but he is still the guy that was ragdolling Derek Lewis 2 years ago or whatever. And he's beaten enough fighters where I think he's going to next level Waldo Cortez Acosta if he gets him to the ground. I think, maybe he'll need more than one takedown, but there's a chance he doesn't. Waldo, he's never been put away. He's been beaten once, and it was against Rogerio de Lima. And I do think Rogerio de Lima is definitely a much more complete fighter than he is, but he's still not as dominant on the ground as somebody like Sergey Spivac. And of course, getting an armbar from his back was a nice look in his last victory over here against Marcin Tabora. But his losses, here he lost to Cyril Gahn. Cyril was just too much for him athletically. I think that fight was solved on the athletic level, and he was beaten up there. And against Jailton Almeida, that's not a path to victory for Waldo, going the Jailton Almeida route. He TKO'd him in round one, but Jailton's a grappling monster. And then you got other losses in the past. Marcin Tabora in their first fight did out Spivac, and Tom Aspinall, of course, knocked him out in a round. That's forgivable. Walt Harris, who has since retired, that was 6 years ago. He was closer to his athletic prime, and he was an athletic problem at heavyweight, and he ended up going through him. So, yeah, Spivac, even though he's lost to perhaps a better class of athlete than Waldo Cortez Acosta, Waldo is still a solid heavyweight striker, a boxer first and foremost, and I think I don't envision him winning a fight by decision against Spivac. I don't think Spivac's the best nail, and I think if Waldo's winning, he's putting him away. So yeah, this fight is pretty two-sided, dichotomous. I know that fucking word. It is a dichotomous fight. Sergey Spivac is the grappler in this matchup, and he's got 15 finishes and his 17 wins. I'm taking him to go through Waldo Cortez Acosta. As we see here, it's all finishes for Spivac and victory, aside from that miracle decision over Alexei Olenek. Not that he didn't win the fight, it's just a miracle that that fight went the distance. And Carlos Felipe, he beat him by decision 5 years ago. Carlos Felipe was a tough guy to dominate, definitely an underrated UFC guy for his time there. But yeah, here I think Waldo's got a lot of momentum, but it's because he hasn't faced somebody as beastly as Sergey Spivac on the ground. So Spivac is the pick, but the play is definitely the under. And that is my big play so far. Next up, we have Azamat Murzakonov versus Brennison Ribieiro. My prediction for this fight is Azamat Murzakonov wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by knockout in round one. Having said that, I haven't bet on the under, which is minus 160 for under a round and a half. I do think there's value there, but I just get scared with 1.5 rounds. Usually when I'm gung-ho on a finish, I'm looking to wait for the 2.5 round line. But I am going with Murzakonov by knockout. Of course, I'll wait for the props and everything. Having said that, Brennison Ribieiro is a very dangerous guy himself, very versatile guy as well, potent finisher, and he's a gigantic underdog. So, yeah, even though I haven't bet on him, you're not crazy if you did, because he is a very dangerous guy. Murzakonov, though, he's never been beaten. He's 14-0. He was almost beaten by Tafon and Chukwi, but his danger was there for him in round 3, and he took Tafon and Chukwi out with a flying knee. But Tafon was really working him with a lot of body kicks in that fight. But that's just another example of his traits being there for him. A 3rd-round finish, which he's also gotten another one over Devin Clark. Got a nice 2nd-round finish over Menafield, and beat up Jacoby largely in his decision victory. This guy's looked really good in the UFC here, and even though Brennison Ribieiro has already surpassed my expectations, and he's got some momentum here, I do have major doubt in his chin, and I think Murzakonov is going to cash in on that doubt. Although I probably won't cash in on the victory there because he's a gigantic underdog favorite. But yeah, I've got to go with Murzakonov. I think he's going to make it really difficult for Brennison Ribieiro to mix it up. And Brennison Ribieiro, again, is a good, versatile fighter. Got a nice Kimura victory. But I still think on the feet, as dangerous as Brennison is, I could never trust him to win that battle. If Murzakonov had been knocked out a few times, then yeah, I would be more I would have already played him, bet on him. But I never seen Murzakonov knocked out. I've seen him handle every situation pretty damn well. And again, I think he's too dangerous for what I consider a suspect chin. So Murzakonov by knockout is the pick. Perhaps it'll be the play. But of course, perhaps I'll get drunk and bet on Brennison Ribieiro because he's a gigantic fucking underdog. Next up, we have Bruno Silva versus Joshua Van. My prediction for this fight is Joshua Van wins, and I'll go with him winning by decision. Having said that, blah, 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 with all the horse shit and Bruno Silva and the value. You already know what I'm going to say. Bruno Silva's a gigantic underdog, and this isn't one where I'm sitting it out. I've bet on Bruno Silva, and he's in Juliana Pena territory, and he's such a good fighter that it just warrants a bet. But no doubt my prediction is Joshua Van wins, and I'll go with him winning by decision. And I'll go with him losing round 1 and winning rounds 2 and 3, which is something he's done in just about every UFC fight that he's had. But he's shown that from the beginning, from taking the short notice fight to get into the UFC against Zhalgas Zhumagulov, of all people. Seasoned 5-round warrior with some dog shit luck in the UFC, in my opinion. But still, Joshua Van didn't need luck. That's not one of the decisions that shouldn't have gone his way. Zhalgas clearly lost that fight, and Joshua Van, who showed up unknown at 23 years old or whatever, looked like the seasoned vet outlasting Zhalgas. And he's been outlasting everybody since, aside from the one guy to knock him out in round 3, Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson, who is Mr. Round 3, above just about anybody. Joshua Van, Christian Rodriguez, whoever. I'll put Charles Johnson against anybody in round 3. But Charles, even though he usually loses rounds 1 and 2 before winning round 3 within a too late scenario, he shut the lights out of Joshua Van. Joshua Van is still young. He's looked pretty fucking durable since, and certainly beforehand, so I'm not going to write him off. But it happened. It was only a year and a half ago or whatever, and Bruno Silva is very dangerous. He's a dynamic guy. Maybe a notch below Manel Kopp, who beat him in his last fight, but Bruno can still make shit happen, and he's shown it in the UFC. The pick is Van outlast him because Bruno has been outlasted. That was kind of the story of most of his UFC losses early on. He lost. He got submitted against Khalid Taha. It was overturned, but that was a 3rd-round submission. A rare sub for Khalid, who got him out of there with an arm triangle in a good battle. And then he lost to David Dvorak and Tagir Ulanbekov. In general, outlasted and in general, out-muscled and out-positioned, and lost a physical battle, conceding top position. But since then, he's looked really good. He's gotten some nice round 2 finishes as well down the stretch against Tyson Nam, fucking killer, and Cody Durden. That was an excellent performance. So I'm not willing to say he has bad cardio, even though, again, he lost in round 3 in his last fight to Manel Kopp. But I still think Joshua Van will have an advantage in round 3 because Van is one of the more trustworthy round 3 fighters out there. But Van, again, there's a little bit of doubt in that he was knocked out, and he was also submitted a few years back. This guy, Devon Jackson, I believe, tossed him around and put him in all kinds of precarious positions. Van survived, and then was just caught, pinned, and ended up getting choked. But still, I have to go with the upside of Joshua Van as for my prediction here. He's looked really good going into the UFC and fighting up a few levels, and he's looked really sharp. And I think he is going to tame Bruno Silva and outlast him. So the prediction is Van wins a decision. But again, the bet right now is on Bruno Silva, and I'll wait for props to drop to see if there's any other plays to make. Bruno, I would say, would be much more likely to get a finish against Van, considering Bruno's danger and also Van's 2 losses. But I am certainly happy having bet on his money line, because it's wide enough. Next up, we have Kevin Holland versus Vicente Luque opening up the main card. And this is going to be an amazing fucking fight. My prediction for this one is Kevin Holland wins. And I'm going to go with him winning by TKO, although a decision wouldn't surprise me. But I am favoring Kevin Holland here. I think on the flip side, Vicente Luque, who's a nice over 2-1 underdog, I think his primary path to victory is submission. I still have it in my head that Holland's impossible to knock out. Wonder Boy got a doctor stoppage, but I think Holland is not getting knocked out against anybody. And even though Holland can be submitted and Luque is an incredibly dangerous submission artist, I still don't expect Holland to get submitted here. I don't think Holland is going to be gorilla fucked like he was against the guys that submitted him: Hamzat Chimaev, Brendan Allen, Ranier de Ritter, and Rafael Lovato Jr., who's even better than those other guys. But those are all submission monsters at middleweight. And even though Luque is an incredibly dangerous guy, I don't think he's going to be muscling around Holland so easily. And again, I think Holland's chin keeps him safe from the club and sub of Vicente Luque as well. And on the flip side, I think Holland has one chance of getting a finish over Luque, and it is knockout. Luque's been submitted before, but these days you want to go through him. It's a knockout. He was TKO'd in his last two losses. One was against Jeff Neal, who really beat him up. I mean, Luque also beat him up, but Jeff Neal had him hurt on multiple occasions and in the end knocked him out in round 3. It was a brutal fight that I think perhaps took something from Vicente Luque. And then he was TKO'd in his last loss 2 fights ago against Joaquin Buckley. No shame in that. Buckley is Buckley, but I didn't like the way Luque looked in that fight. I'm a pussy in a bathrobe. Yeah, I know. I don't know how to throw a punch. But I watch fights, and I've seen all of Luque's fights pretty much, and that was not the same Luque that I was used to seeing. The guy who would go through wars with Mike Perry and Hyder Hassan on The Ultimate Fighter. Don't think I haven't rewatched that in the last few years. Vicente Luque, he's always been a battle-tested warrior, but maybe the battles have started to add up. And Kevin Holland may not be punch for punch as dangerous as Joaquin Buckley or Jeff Neal, but he's still dangerous. And if you don't believe me, go ask Joaquin Buckley or Jeff Neal, because he knocked them both out in round 3. So even though Kevin Holland isn't as forceful and impactful as these guys punch for punch, he's got deceptive pop at his punches, and he's got the height and the reach and the rest of it. I think Kevin Holland is a phenomenal 170-pound fighter, and that's where this fight's taking place. Luque, I think his primary path to victory is submission, but of course, if he's going the grappling route, I don't think he can gorilla fuck Holland easily like the middleweights, the guys that submitted him, and also the decision guys, Brunson and Marvin Vettori. But I still think in tight, Luque would have physical strength on Kevin Holland. So I don't think he'll stop the squirming, but I do think he'll maintain top position. I suppose that's his path to winning a decision. But I do think submission would come before that. And on the feet, I think the decision and all the small moments will go to Kevin Holland, who still has a rock-solid chin, and I consider him more dangerous than Luque, even though Luque has those incredibly sharp hooks. Luque's a fucking killer. But yeah, I'm going with Kevin Holland. I haven't bet on him. The under set at 1.5 rounds, so I'll probably wait for the under 2.5 rounds and maybe the props. Holland by knockout or decision and Luque by submission going the other way. But in general, I'm going with Holland here. Holland by knockout is the pick. Next up, we have Patchy Mix making his UFC debut against Mario Bautista. My prediction here is Patchy Mix wins. I'm going to go with him winning by submission. I think he's an incredibly dangerous guy. And even though Mario Bautista is an awesome fighter, I think Patchy Mix is going to be too much for him here in his UFC debut. Even though I feel like root against guys coming into the UFC with high profiles. But Patchy is that, and I think he's going to make good on his promise. As you can see here, he's got a very solid record. Even if you don't recognize all these names, they're awesome fighters. The best of which here is Kyoji Horiguchi. Kyoji Horiguchi's a smaller guy, but one of the best flyweights ever, and he's back in the UFC. I think, I don't know, his fight was canceled, but he'll be making big waves again. He beat Rafian Stotts, got him out of there with a knockout, a knee. That was a fight I was really looking forward to. This guy's a monster, Stotts, and even though Patchy Mix is not known for his striking or his overall danger, he shut his lights out with a big knee. And beat this guy Magomedov, choked him out in round 2 with a guillotine a few years ago. That was a big victory. Magomedov's a guy who's split wins with Piotr Yan, and arguably could have split wins with Patchy Mix, in my opinion. His last fight against Magomedov, it was their rematch. It was a 5-round fight, and it's definitely a fight you could argue should have gone the other way. But Patchy was very competitive. It's just, I gave the nod to Magomedov. Magomedov's a good grappler, but he also clipped Patchy with some strikes there. And I feel like some of those bigger shots were the difference on my meaningless scorecard. But he's he's got a solid chin, I think. He's never been knocked out. His one loss is to Juan Archuleta. Juan Archuleta was a beast of a fighter, wrestler, kickboxer, and he was able to outlast Patchy, survived him on the ground because Patchy got on top of him in the first round and a half, 2 rounds. And then in what was a kickboxing bout mostly for the rest of the fight, Juan got the better of him. Patchy was a step and a half behind on the feet, but still, he looked tough as fuck. And yeah, that's a thing. I think he can be bested on the feet. I think there are some holes there for sure. He's not the most technical guy. He is a long, tall guy, and he does have this Diaz type of pressure to him. But I do think, in general, his next loss, will be one where the majority is contested on the feet. Kyoji Horiguchi also hit him with some good shots in that fight. That fight wasn't so close, but Kyoji Horiguchi definitely took a few rounds, or at least a round from him, I'd say. But in general, he's been very dominant. You see wins I don't even talk about here, like Sergio Pettis, a monster I'm sure you're familiar with. James Gallagher, the guy that got hit with the sweet chin music by Ricky Bandejas, the guy that Patchy beat in his debut. Yuki Matoya and Ryzen. He's just a monster, Patchy Mix, and I think he's going to be too much for Mario Bautista. I think he could submit anybody. I don't think Mario is going to be able to mix in his grappling in this fight like he's been known to do. He's gone through guys with his grappling. That is off the table. But even mixing things up and, I'll change levels, and well, that's off the table. You can't get lackadaisical with Patchy Mix. If he can wrap his arms around your neck from any position, you're in trouble. And another basis for my prediction or my bet on Patchy, the money line, is even without securing the finish, Patchy is a really good grappler and he's good at securing the body triangle. And I think he's got great grappling to control for points. And also, with body triangles and such dominant grappling, he may be a 10-8 fighter, which means maybe I'll put 50 cents on draw. But no doubt I'm going with Patchy here. Mario Bautista's been beaten twice. I don't even have to look at his record. I know it, but let me pull it up here. He was knocked out against Trevin Jones in round 2 there. Trevin Jones, a really weird type of fighter, very capable, underrated, overlooked, all that horse shit. And he caught Mario when he got a little too comfortable. Caught him suddenly and took him out. And Corey Sandhagen went through Mario in his UFC debut and got him out of there with an armbar. At this point, that's over 6 years ago, so it's in the distant past. And in the first portion of his MMA career, really, he didn't have a lot of experience there. And of course, it's the Corey, who's a fucking title contender today. So not a bad loss, but he was submitted. And I think if Corey Sandhagen or anybody can submit you 6 years ago, even if it was in practice or whatever, Patchy Mix can submit you today. Patchy Mix is that dangerous. So Mario, I think the pressure's going to be on him after that fight against Jose Aldo to not fight a boring fight. So I think he's going to be caught in a submission sooner or later. I think if Patchy's able to go through him, turn a corner, take his back, he's in trouble. But if Mario Bautista finds himself in any trouble and he's looking to mix it up, he's going to run right into a guillotine or something like that. So I've got Patchy Mix winning. I'm usually not this high on a guy coming in against somebody around Mario Batista's rank, whatever that is. He just beat Jose Aldo, so whatever it is, it's pretty high. But I still think Patchy's a special fighter, and I've got him going through Mario Bautista. Patchy by submission is the pick, and Patchy right now is the bet. Next up, we have Kelvin Gastelum versus Joe Pyfer. My prediction here is Pyfer wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. Having said that, yes, it's another one of those with lopsided odds where I'm betting on Kelvin Gastelum. I think Kelvin Gastelum, he was a bigger underdog the first time these guys were booked. He was a 4-1 underdog, I believe. Now he's only 3-1. But I still see the value on Kelvin Gastelum. I think Kelvin Gastelum has durability that will help him against Joe Pyfer. Pyfer might hit harder than any other middleweight, but Kelvin might be tougher than any other middleweight, at least as far as his iron Mexican chin goes, his Mexican-American chin. But on the ground is where he's been finished. He's been submitted 3 times. I was there for one of them against Chris Weidman. The others are against Sean Brady, who might be fighting for the title this year, and also against Jack Hermanson, who laced up a leg and heel hooked him in a few minutes, a minute or two. Jack, of course, is the last guy to beat Joe Pyfer. But regardless, those 3 guys are in a better class of submission grappler than Joe Pyfer. I know Joe Pyfer has more going on than meets the eye, but what's met the eye, like that submission win over Abdul Razak Al Hassan, doesn't suggest that he can go through Kelvin on the ground. I've heard interviews with Joe Pyfer saying he might want to take the fight to the ground as well. I think I heard that anyway. And look, that's definitely a path to success for him as well. He's not going to get armbarred or anything from the guard from Kelvin. I don't think so anyway. He's the bigger man, the stronger man, and he hits harder. So yeah, that could be a path to victory for him. But I would still say Kelvin survives. I'd be surprised if Pyfer got any sort of finish here, which is why I will wait for the point spread with Kelvin Gastelum and the props and all that. But the value on Kelvin winning this fight comes from his size. He is the smaller man, and depends on how his weight cut goes. This fight might end up at fucking super heavyweight. But if Kelvin has a good weight cut, he's the sharper, faster guy, and speed does occasionally beat power. All right, at least that's what I've been told. And with his durability, I don't think Joe Pyfer will get too many big moments, let alone the knockout. And also, Kelvin is a seasoned warrior, truly battle tested. Joe Pyfer's been the distance twice. One was a 5-round fight and a loss, which in a way is a good look, fighting at a high level against Jack Hermanson. But Kelvin Gastelum has been 15 minutes, 25 minutes in blood and guts wars, all-time classic Hall of Fame fights against Izzy. And I think Kelvin Gastelum, that's just another asset for him, his comfortability in a close, grueling 15-minute fight. So he's got some upside, definitely, Kelvin. And I think the odds are too lopsided. But the prediction is Joe Pyfer wins by decision. I think on the feet, even though Kelvin does have speed, Joe Pyfer does have power, and power can win decisions as long as he's not being beaten to the punch steadily. I envision Joe's punches looking more valuable to judges. And of course, I think this is a fight where whoever gets on top wins the ground battle, but Joe Pyfer is the bigger, stronger guy. So I think in tight or whatever, he can be the physical bully against Kelvin and win some positional battles, even in the clinch, of course. So yeah, in general, I favor Joe Pyfer, but in specifics, looking at the specifically, I bet on Kelvin Gastelum. He's a fucking 3-1 underdog, and yeah, I will wait for the props because I trust his durability, and of course that means the point spread is intriguing to me. Next up, we have Juliana Pena versus Kayla Harrison for Pena's world title, bantamweight world title. My prediction for this one is Kayla Harrison wins a decision. It just seems the most likely to me that she wins this fight, and I'll go with her winning by decision. Having said that, yes, Juliana Pena is a gigantic underdog, and I have bet on her. Juliana, I have a soft spot for her because she is the reason that I created this channel, because I wanted to document my prediction that she would beat Amanda Nunes at UFC 269. That was the first fight, and she did beat her. She didn't win in rounds 3, 4, or 5 like I really needed her to win a fucking $1 million. But she still won and came through in a big way. And I think that's one of the classic underdog upsets of all time. And here, even though she's the defending champion, that's exactly what this would be if she beat Kayla Harrison. A huge upset. And probably a comeback as well, like she had in the Amanda Nunes fight. Because I do think Kayla Harrison is going to be winning the positional battle. She's a fucking judoka, a monster judoka, really good grappler, and she's a fucking physical tank. She is the female Lesnar, and I think she's definitely going to be bullying Juliana in general. And of course, the reason I'm picking Kayla to win instead of putting my balls on the line and going with Juliana Pena is because Kayla Harrison has lost one fight, and it was to a fucking monster named Larissa Pacheco. I don't know if you know her, but if you don't know her, she's one of the most dangerous women in the world. At the tippy top of that list with fucking whoever. Jessica Andrade and Polyana Viana and whatever. But she's very fucking dangerous, and she's better than Polyana Viana. She's a very good fighter. Championship level fighter. And of course, her best win far and away is her win over Kayla Harrison. But that was a 5-round win, and Kayla, in some really shitty spots over the course of 5 rounds, especially she got more tired being put in chokes and beaten up from bad spots, she did not wilt. She did not wilt. She fought to survive through chokes and getting her back taken and getting hit in the fucking face, which is not something she's totally accustomed to. This was her first time being the nail, which is something I always look to. Your traits that you show when you have to be the nail. And Kayla was a good nail. I still think the best path to victory for Pena would be a finish over decision. Juliana Pena's really good at getting on top, but in general, I expect her to lose that battle. Kayla's just too strong of a grappler where I think the positional battle is already lost. But I think Juliana Pena, if she can devolve this fight into a fucking bloody war, a blood and guts war, she's the more blood and guts fighter. She's the girl that stood toe to toe with Amanda Nunes and beat the fight out of her and did it pretty quickly too, from when she turned the gas up, turned the heat on, whatever the fuck. Either way, the heat, the gas, it was all going, and she beat the shit out of Amanda Nunes and made her wilt. And Juliana does have that doggedness. She does have that true grit, even though she's been finished a few times, which I'll get to. But in general, Juliana Pena is the girl that I can trust to be the more aggressive, grittier Diego Sanchez type of fighter, for lack of a better term. She was beaten 5 times. 3 of them are by finish. All of them are by submission, though, even though one's a TKO. She was TKO'd against Sarah Moras, where her arm was broken back in 2012. Whatever. And she ended up avenging that loss with a guillotine choke a year later in round 2. But her arm was broken. She did not tap. Tough as all fuck. But she was caught in a submission, which is how she's been finished in her other 2 finish losses. She got armbarred against Valentina. That time she did tap. which I guess she learned from her previous loss there. And there's no shame tapping to an armbar. And then she was choked out against Germaine de Randamie. It was a technical submission, as you see here, because Juliana did not tap out. I don't think she expected to get choked by Germaine de Randamie of all people, but she was caught deep into the fight and taken out. Still, the fact that she didn't tap speaks to her toughness, along with getting her ass kicked but not getting finished against Amanda Nunes. Uh, I think Juliana Pena is going to be tough to get out of here. I think, I don't want to say she can't be beaten when someone's on top of her. That's a stupid thing to say, but it hasn't happened yet. Those 3 submission losses I talked about come when she was on top or trying to get on top of her opponents. Kayla Harrison, though, yeah, she's so fucking dominant and so good. If she's on top of Juliana Pena, certainly from the mount, it's not like she has no chance of finishing her. Now, she can get it done. I'd say submission would come first for Kayla, but, when you're dominant positionally, a TKO is always possible as well. But still, you put a gun to my head and say, hey, Kayla wins this fight. Is it finish or decision? I'm saying decision. I think Juliana Pena is going to be scrappy. I think she's going to be really sound technically. Julia's a really, really good grappler herself. And I think she's going to be able to handle herself with Kayla positionally dominating her. For Juliana winning, I would take, if you told me she won this fight, I would go with her winning by finish in rounds 3 or 4. I would go with a submission before a TKO. I think it would be an Amanda Nunes type of situation where she kind of has to beat the fight out of her and then she strangles Kayla. But still, again, Kayla's been in some shitty spots, only on one occasion, really, but it was against a dangerous girl, and she showed a lot of great traits in defeat. So, yeah, the bets will be going on Juliana Pena, but not with confidence. I'm certainly not picking her to win. I've got Kayla Harrison being the physical bully and winning this fight by decision. And in the main event of the evening, we have Merab Dvalishvili taking on Sean O'Malley. My prediction for this fight is Merab wins by decision. My bet for this fight is Sean O'Malley plus points. I've got him at plus 9.5 points. At what the fuck? I got him at plus 13.5 points as well, but also 9.5 points at minus 175. The basis for that prediction is I don't think Merab can finish Sean O'Malley, even though Sean O'Malley has been finished before. But I don't think he can finish Sean O'Malley. And I also don't think Sean O'Malley is going to get shut out here. I think their first fight was very close. And even though I said a lot of the same shit about Sean Strickland versus DDP before their rematch, and then their rematch was pretty lopsided, I don't think this one's going to be lopsided. I don't think Merab Dvalishvili is going to have an easier time with Sean O'Malley. Might have the same level of difficulty or might be even more difficult. I think Sean O'Malley is going to make some good adjustments. I think he's a smart fighter. I think he found success in round 5, stabbing him with front kicks. And I think in general, he's going to be more aggressive with shit up the middle. I expect him to try to get that front kick working and also some serious danger up the middle to thwart the shots of Merab. And when Merab does get in on him, I think Sean's going to be trying to lace up chokes and make shit work in a different way rather than just turning his hips and being grinded against the cage. I guess it depends on what point in the round it's at, but he knows Merab can press for 25 minutes. But look, their first fight was whatever it was a year ago, and it was very close. I had Sean O'Malley winning rounds 3 and 5. And if you're him, you could argue he won round 1. But I do think Merab definitely won that decision. I think he definitely got the better of him. But I think Sean was deceptively competitive. That's one of those fights, kind of like with the Leon versus Bilal, where you remember it as more one-sided because they were never even on the scorecards. The winning fighter wins rounds 1 and 2, and then round 4. And the losing fighter wins round 3 and 5. Just like Sean Shirk versus Matt Hughes. And it's never remembered as a competitive fight, but that fight was competitive, and I do think Sean O'Malley with the point spread is the bet I am most comfortable with on this whole card. Merab, he is Not a big finisher at all. He drowned Marlon Moraes, but Moraes is one of the least durable guys that he's fought. He's got spinning back fist over Ralphie and Stott. Shit can happen, but in general, I think Merab is going to be content to ride Sean O'Malley, and he's got 25 minutes of fighting in his head. Merab, he went for a nice guillotine on Sean O'Malley in the first fight. Looked good for a brief moment, but when he doesn't get that tap, Merab's instinct is to abandon the submission for position. And I think at the very least, that keeps Sean O'Malley safe from getting finished. As for Sean getting a finish, knockout is certainly how I would go there. Sean O'Malley, I think, is an underrated submission artist. And again, I expect to see submissions and things, new wrinkles to him in this matchup. But I think his primary chance of a finish, of course, is on the feet because Sean O'Malley is an exceptional striker, one of the best in the division. And even though Merab is one hell of a striker in an MMA fight, technically and physically, he's a step and a half behind Sean O'Malley. And I also think Sean winning a decision is much more likely than the odds would suggest. I believe it's almost even with his knockout prop. Let me pull up the fucking odds here. I forgot you can see this shit. Sean O'Malley by decision is plus 600. Knockout is plus 500. I'd probably favor decision over knockout, to be honest. But certainly, if anybody's getting finished, my top pick would be O'Malley by knockout. And for Merab, look, his decision line is minus 165. That's not worth it to me. I think I'm more comfortable with the point spread for Sean O'Malley because I think Sean is going to be competitive in this fight. I don't think he's going to have fallen off a cliff. I think he's been training hard. I know he's been training with Mighty Mouse recently as well. And I think Sean O'Malley is going to give a really good fight to Merab Dvalishvili. And frankly, like I said, I think he gave him a really good fight the first time around. But the prediction has to be Merab because Merab is incredibly durable himself. I mean, you can look to the fucking Ricky Simone victory if you'd like, or defeat if you'd like. But the way Merab handled that, in the worst possible spot for what seemed like a minute and a half, he's tough as all fuck and he is not looking to tap. And the first time Merab does get submitted, or the next time he gets submitted, it's going to be a technical submission. No doubt about it. But Merab, I do envision him winning because I think he is going to be able to stand up to the danger of Sean O'Malley and rip him to the mat repeatedly. Merab is physically stronger on the inside. He's fucking relentless, and he's got multiple ways to take you down. And even though Sean O'Malley, I think, is going to be very competitive in this fight, and he's going to spend time thwarting takedowns, he's not going to thwart them all. He's not going to stop them all. And Merab will just keep on coming, and I've got him winning this fight by hitting multiple takedowns. Still, though, like I said, the value, in my opinion, is on the Sean O'Malley point spread because I'm very sure he doesn't get finished, and I'm not sure that he doesn't win this fight or, take it to Merab. I think Sean O'Malley is going to be very competitive, and I got the point spread. All right, that about wraps it up. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.